Good morning, Vietnam. No, that's wrong. Okay, because I'm excited, because I uh, figured out how to put some pictures in these things, I'm going to tell a little bit about, show pictures of some of the things I talked about already. So one of them was how we went to Avila every year. And let's see if I remember how to do this. Oh, this is my sister in front of our I think that was our Nash Rambler at Avila with her fish catch. And this is my brother in front of the little town of Avila at the time. So, right over here on this side was the road, and then the other side of the road was the beach. Avila was such a cool place. So that was our, those are a couple of pictures of Avila. I think we have some more that we'll find and put up. And then I told you about my first car. This side, these were scanned together. So, but this is my first car that I bought. I paid $350 for this car, and it got about 10 miles to the gallon. So, and I thought I was hugely fat at that time. Wish I was hugely fat like that right now. It's amazing how you look at yourself differently. But all the girls were way thinner than this back then, so this is more like normal today, not back then. This is Mom, Grandma to you, or great grandma to some of you. Bruce, my brother, and I think it must have been his graduation. I don't know. I don't know. And this was my dad and his pride and joy, his Corvette. So I know everybody wishes they owned that today, but he sold it, I think, to a friend that worked in his business. But that was his Corvette that he pulled us through the valley, that one where we broke down. And this is just a picture of my dad and my brother playing pool the year that we got the pool table for Christmas. And this pool table ended up going into the room that used to be mine and my sister's, which was the largest of the two bedrooms that had the double entry doors, entry from the hall and an entry from the kitchen. This pool table went in there, and that became my brother's room. And my sister and I moved into what had been my brother's room. So those are the pictures that I put on here. I didn't get around to putting any more because I'm lazy. I got really lazy, so I didn't. But anyway, so and since I brought up about the pool table we got for Christmas, we used to get cool things for Christmas. I'll fix this camera a little bit if I can. My folks would just sometimes buy us these cool, wonderful things. Like, I think the same year we got the pool table, we also got a ping pong table, which was totally cool. We had great fun with that, but it could have been a different year. I'm not sure. I don't know. Anyway, they would sometimes get us these big cool things. But the thing that was most memorable about all of our Christmases probably was the Christmas trees, because if you ever watched A Christmas Story, how they made a big deal out about going and getting their Christmas tree, well, we were sort of like that. I mean, we all piled in the car and we'd go to a Christmas tree lot. We didn't cut our own. I don't think they had the cut your own back then unless you went up into the forest. You could go up in the forest, get a permit and go up in the forest, but I don't believe they had cut your own lots at that particular time when I was real little. So we'd go to a Christmas tree lot, and I love Christmas tree lots because you're overwhelmed with the smell of Christmas trees. Awesome smell. And they'd already have them hooked. They do this today too, but we take them off the wooden stands, but they would have the trees on the wooden stands, and you just bring them home and set them up. We didn't put them in water. We'd set them up, and of course they'd die, but we didn't get them a month ahead. I think we probably got our tree a couple of weeks before Christmas. But I don't know for sure, but that's what I'm thinking, because, of course, by the time Christmas got there, it would be deader than a nit, but with, you know, that's what we did. And because we did that, the fragrance is stronger, I think, than today. Because I can't get that Christmas smell. I keep trying when I buy cut trees to get that Christmas smell in my house, and it's very faint if I get it at all. And back then it was like overwhelming. You'd wake up in the morning and you could smell Christmas tree. It was cool. But we'd go get the Christmas tree. My mother always wanted to have a flock tree. And she didn't always get her flock tree, but she always wanted to have the flock tree. So that was one of the conversations we'd go through and figure out whether. And flocked means that now they spray the whole tree. They call it flocking. They spray the whole tree with a color, or just the white stuff, but it makes the whole tree look like it's snowed on or whatever. But more back then, flocking was they would put this white stuff on the tops of the limbs, like it was like snow on the tops of the limbs, and I think that's more like what she had in mind. But generally we wouldn't get that. We'd get a regular tree, but we'd use tinsel. And I still love putting tinsel on my trees. This year we couldn't because we have a cat, and I was afraid she'd swallow the tinsel, so I didn't get to put tinsel, but I love the tinsel on the tree. It's just so pretty. And then one year my mom decided she wanted a fake tree, and I believe, probably our first, I was thinking it was the foil ones, but I don't think so. I think our fake tree was the white. It was a white plastic tree. You put it all together, and we hated that year. And I think you couldn't put, back then the Christmas tree lights would get real hot. And I think we couldn't put them on that tree because they'd melt the plastic. Because for some reason we didn't use Christmas tree lights. She got this thing that, like a floodlight sort of a deal, with a deal in front of it that would turn around, that had cellophane, different colored cellophane on it, and it would turn around, and then it would make the tree that color, whatever color was turning around on there. And so we hated it because there was no, and we got spray pine. Oh, that stuff's terrible. It doesn't smell like pine, and it gives you a headache. So we didn't keep a fake tree for all that many years, but we did have one. And so that, that was just something I wanted to share, because just like in that movie, going and getting the Christmas tree was always an adventure. And we did what they did with the lamp, my dad did with the tree. We would set it up and we would get it all decorated, and then he'd say, let's go see what it looks like from the street. And we would run out to the street and look at our window to see how our tree was looking through the window. It was just something that we did. It was very cool. And my car, my first car, when I went looking for that car, I was a senior in high school, because like I told you, I didn't get my driver's license till I was 17. I was 17, and I was probably already a senior in high school. But I finally wanted a car, and I would love to have my folks be alive so I could ask them about the insurance on our cars, because I don't recall, we had to buy our own cars, but I don't recall having to pay for our own insurance. So I don't know if insurance was just not raised when you had kids that got cars back then, or if my parents just ate it. I don't know. I can't imagine they would have just ate it, because they didn't really want us to buy our own cars, but anyway, so I went looking, and one of the cars I looked at was a T-Bird, one of those big, long-fendered T-Birds. I actually looked at one of those to buy and chose the 55 Chevy instead. And I don't remember why. I do remember why I did that. I learned to drive in a small car. I thought I learned to drive in the Carnegie. My brother thought I learned in the not Nash, that other Valiant thing. I don't remember the car I actually learned to drive in, but I think it was the Carnegie, because it was small. I remember driving the small car. So when I went out looking at these big cars, they were like buses to me. My sister test drove them for me because I was afraid to get in them and to test drive them. That's how bad it was. And the T-Bird was enormous. It had these big long fenders and it went forever. It was yellow. And I decided between the two, the Chevy was much more doable for me because it was smaller. And it was all, he had put new upholstery, done it himself, but it still looked good. New upholstery and stuff in it. So I bought the Chevy. So I used to take it to school and thought I was somebody, you know. But back then, on my senior year, I decided I wanted to learn to play the guitar because I thought it would be cool to go places and be able to play the guitar so we could sing. So I got this guitar, and I think I was working for my dad at the time because I had the money to buy the guitar. So pretty sure I used to drive delivery for my dad's business, deliver the false teeth to the dentist, and did that in a Volkswagen Bug. So I'm thinking that's how come I had the money to buy my car and to buy my guitar. But I bought this guitar from Sears. Turns out it really wasn't a good guitar, but it was pretty, and I don't know anything at all about guitars. And I found a guy that would give lessons over at the Sears Center, and or the Manchester Center where Sears was, and he was adorable. And so I had this huge major crush on this guy, and so I once a week go over there to do guitar lessons, which was such a joke because I never practiced through the week, so he was not happy with me at all. And you know, I was this nerdy kid. So but anyway, so I'm on my way to my lesson and stopped at this stoplight, and all of a sudden the hood of my car, the paint on the hood of my car started bubbling. It was just bubbling, and I went, oh my God. And then I realized that my car was on fire. And I jumped out of the car real quick and I started screaming, help, help. And then realized my guitar was in there. So I went back and reached in and grabbed my guitar out of there. At that point in time, it was still just under the hood, bubbling. And so I grabbed my guitar out of there. And thank God I was parked right next, there was a gas station, right? Of course, back then there was a gas station on every corner. There was a gas station right there on the corner, and these guys were over there, and they grabbed a fire extinguisher and ran across, popped my hood, and put my fire out. And I was so shaken. I said, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. And the guy said, well, we'll push it. They pushed it over into the gas station so they could check it out and see what the deal was. And what had happened in the 55 Chevys, they used to have this little glass bowl that was attached on the gas line, and for some reason they run the gas through this little glass bowl. It was not very big, and the gasket on it had failed, and the gas leaked out of that little glass bowl onto the top of my engine, and the gas caught up. So the only thing that was burning in my car was the actual gas that was sitting on top of my engine and the paint on the hood of my car. So the guy tightened it up so that it wasn't leaking and sent me on my way with my burned up car. So I thought that was totally cool and very interesting because I don't believe they charged me or anything. It was very cool. But what a dangerous thing to do, to have this glass bowl that could leak hanging right over the top of your engine. Well, it's a good thing they changed that. That may have been the only year they did that. I don't know. But it ran good ever since then. But like I said, it got about 10 miles to the gallon. So it wasn't a great car to own if you didn't have any money. And when Peepaw and I got married and were together, we ended up selling it to a guy who also took our two pit bull mix dogs, sisters, Tara and Nicotine. He took those dogs too because we couldn't keep them. They would not stay in the fence. They got out no matter what you did. They got out, and they were terrors. And so I said, we can't do this anymore. So He took them, and then he made the mistake of, we found this out later, he went somewhere and left them in the car while he got out, and they tore up the upholstery in that car. He was not a happy camper, and I think he expected us to do something about it. But hey, we didn't tell you to leave the pit bulls in the car. I mean, come on. But I've got to take a pen to mark these off because I forget what I tell you, and I decided I would make sure to try not to repeat everything that I tell you. Okay, so. And now I remember I think it was last week, I told you about us going to the drive-in movies a lot. We used to do that a lot. I don't think I talked about the movie, this one particular movie when we went. But one night we went to see War of the Worlds. And like I told you, we were always sitting out in front of the vehicle or on the chairs or asleep in the back. But when we got a little older, we'd be sitting out in front on the chairs and watching the movie. And my dad would, I don't know how they got sound, but he would put the speaker thing out there so we could hear, so it was all good, but I don't know how it all worked. But anyway, so this one night we went to see War of the Worlds. Now, if you've seen War of the Worlds, you're going to know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you should watch it just for the fun of it, because it's probably would be a little hokey today with today's graphics, but back in the day it was like, oh my God, it was so real. So we're sitting out there, as kids are sitting out there watching War of the Worlds, and we're outside, of course. You know, you've got the sky and there's the screen up there and you're watching this, and I kept looking in the sky because those things were scary to me, and I just knew we were going to see them flying over. And so in the part in the movie, and truthfully, other than the visual of those things flying in the sky, the only other thing I honestly remember about the movie was when they were in that building, some sort of a building, and that alien came and stuck its fingers in on that person's shoulder. No, I jumped out of my seat and screamed. That to me was totally scary, but it was doubly scary because we were outside. I mean, if we'd have been seeing that in an inside theater, it would not have had the same effect, I'm sure. But when you're out there, and we used to, okay, back in the day, this was actually before the landing on the moon. I mean, so we didn't, look at my cats, we didn't, we didn't do space travel and stuff back then, and the Russians had launched their Sputnik, and I remember that we would go out in the outside and watch and go take glasses just to see this little light go across the sky, because they tell us if you go out you'll be able to see the Sputnik going across the sky, and so we all have to go out and see the Sputnik. And one night we were out there, I know I get off track, but we were out there looking at the Sputnik. My dad would kill me like my brother if he was still alive, but we were out there watching the Sputnik, and the kids that lived next door, their dad, he was a real spoofer, so he was the cop. I told you he was the cop, and so we're all looking up at the sky and talking about because you see more than one thing moving up there, planes and other things. I don't know what they were, but things were moving up there, and so you're trying to make sure you see the Sputnik, and he had gone in and gotten one of his flares, and he was behind everybody, and he shot off this flare, and it went up high enough that nobody saw it until it started falling down. And as it was falling down, it was like this, oh my God, it's sparkling and it's coming to the ground. And my dad thought that was something extraterrestrial, like a meteor, and he was going to get the remnants, because that could be, I don't know if he thought it would be valuable, but that would be interesting. I mean, so he got a scoop and a brush, and he ran down to the corner, and he's scooping up that stuff, and our neighbor just was cracking up and told us and so everybody was laughing. I'm sure my dad was embarrassed, but he was really cool about it. But can you imagine how embarrassing that would be? But anyway, so that's my story, because back then you you had War of the Worlds and what was the one? Maybe that was War of the Worlds. Orson Welles did that. Probably was War of the Worlds. You all, I mean, people just thought, that we could get invaded at any time. So now we're out there watching this movie out in the outdoors where we could get like beamed real easy. So it was great, great fun. Loved going to the drive-in movies. My dad used to take us all the time when my mother had her sorority meetings. I don't know that I told you that. My mother had gone to college, and she had joined a sorority, and she had her sorority friends. And so once a month, all of her and her sorority friends would get together at somebody's house. So when it was at our house, we loved it because my dad would take us to the drive-in movies. Sometimes I guess he took us other places, but I remember drive-in movies. My dad would take us to the drive-in movies, and when we got home, we always used to get to have some of the leftover cake that my mother would make. I think I told you all that, but that was good. Another thing we used to do quite often when we were young, teenagers, was go play miniature golf. If you watched American Graffiti, that was something they did, I think, in America. One of the old movies about the 50s, growing up in the 50s, they had you at a miniature golf course, and we used to do that. That's what we did. And we would go there to meet guys, because young teens went and played miniature golf back in the day. It was fun. Great fun thing to do, and it would be cool I know that there probably are still some around, but I don't think it's the thing like it used to be. Like maybe it's more family now. It's definitely for younger kids now if they go, but teenagers don't go hang out at miniature golf courses. But we used to do that, and it was so much fun. And so, you should take your kids. Now my kids are, it's beyond that now for you guys, of course, but for my grandkids, take your kids to miniature golf every once in a while and get them excited about it. Maybe they'll go start hanging out again. Another thing that was different back then than today was our Halloween treats. I don't know when it started. I think when my kids were young is when it started happening that you had to worry about Halloween treats. Back when I was a kid, nobody ever worried about Halloween treats and that somebody might sabotage them. It wasn't a thing. That's terrible that got to be a thing, but it wasn't a thing back then. And so we had of course the one house that everybody had to go to because they gave full size candy bars. You never missed that house. Everybody knew it. Y'all went there. But people would make things like popcorn balls. We loved it when we got popcorn balls. Couldn't do that. You wouldn't eat them today. If your kids got them today, they'd end up in the trash because there's a fear in letting them eat those. But people would make cookies. So you'd get a little bag of cookies that were crumbled by the time you got home, but they still tasted good. We had cool Halloween treats back then, and we would use a pillowcase as our bag when we got older. When you're younger, you do the cute little bag that they would get at the store or whatever. But of course, when you're older and they keep telling you you're too old to be trick-or-treating. No, we're not. We'd have because you could go further too, and we'd have our pillowcases that by the time we were done, we'd have half full of. How unhealthy is that? But we would. How strange is a Halloween tradition anyway? I mean, if you think about it, it's based on paganism or something, some sort of something that's not kosher, and it's going to houses and begging for food. And if you don't give me food, I'm going to pull a trick on you, which is kind of like you were teaching our kids these things, and then you get all this candy that isn't at all good for you. So you got to wonder how that all started in the first place. But of course, I wouldn't change it for the world. I love Halloween, and when my kids were little, I almost always made their Halloween costumes, so I wish I had the pictures. I think I do, that are on some rolls of film in my closet that have never been developed. I'm curious if I took them in, if any pictures would even show up, but most of those didn't get developed, and I'm sure I would have had pictures of all these great costumes. But we had fun. We made some good costumes back when my kids were young, and Halloween was a little scarier then, but they still got to go out and do their thing. Unlike now, I think kids are more limited. I'm sure my kids would be if we were doing Halloween today. Sad thing. Some of our old traditions turn into new things that aren't the same and probably shouldn't still be something that we do. Hang on a minute. Okay. When my when I was, well, for all of my young life that I could remember, my dad owned a lab. When we were young, until we were teenagers, teenagers, because I used to drive delivery for him. No, I did delivery from the other one. So before that, preteen, his lab was in downtown and on the penthouse of a tall building in town. And so you'd take the elevator up, and then to get up to the penthouse, you'd take a staircase to go up there. And the penthouse was a small building or floor on the roof of the building, so you could walk around the roof of the building. I mean, there was all this big open space you could walk around on. And we loved it. It was so cool because you could go up there and look over the side and see the town, the downtown. And my dad taught us how to make paper airplanes. We'd get in trouble for this today. I'm realizing a lot of things I'm telling you about our childhood you'd get in trouble for today, but that's a sad thing. My dad taught us how to make paper airplanes, so we'd make paper airplanes and go out and fly them off the side of the building and see how far that they'd fly out there. And of course, that's littering, but we didn't think about it at the time, so we used to go out there and do that. And I don't know, my dad, brave enough to let us go out and run around on the roof of the building. I don't know, but we did. But it had like a wall. You didn't just fall off the building. You would have had to climb up on this ledge to fall off the building. So it wasn't like that dangerous. But we loved it. And he would let us, he had molds, like the plaster of Paris molds only at school, only these were little molds, things like turtles. The turtle's the one I remember, but things like turtles that so you could make the plaster of Paris and pour, because when you're making false teeth, they use plaster of Paris or something on that order to take an impression of your teeth. I'm sure you've all been through this, and then send it to the lab. Well, at the lab, they fill that impression with this plaster of Paris so that they have your teeth to work on to build whatever prosthesis, I can say that word, that you're having done. And so my dad would let us make plaster of Paris and pour in these little fish or these little molds, and we made, that's one of the things that we would do there. When I was a teenager, I had ordered some little seahorses. You could, in the comic books, they always had these strange little things for sale, and they had little seahorses for sale, and I ordered these little seahorses, and they were little, itty-bitty little things. And they didn't live long, of course, because seahorses can't live unless you have special water or something, I guess. I don't know, but anyway. So when they died, I felt terrible. So I kept them, and they dehydrated and got hard, but they held their shape. And so I took those in one day, and my dad cast those for me into and used gold like you use for crowns. He turned my little seahorses into gold seahorses that we had put a ring on them so you could. I used them for earrings for a while and a necklace. I don't have all of them, but I do believe I have some of them left in my jewelry box. So if you're interested in those, that's what those are. That we actually cast those. Those were honestly good live little seahorses, and they turned out really cool. That you can see all of their details. Very cool. And then another. I ramble on. Terry tells me I'm going way too long, but another thing that we had that my dad who loved to tinker in the garage and always was making things. When we were preteen, early teen, he made us a unicycle, and it was cool. It was uncomfortable for me to sit on. The seat was terrible, and I couldn't balance very well. But my brother, I tell you, my brother, he could just do stuff, and he got on the on the unicycle and pedaled away. So he would ride around on that unicycle all the time, and I don't believe probably there was anybody in the neighborhood even that could ride that unicycle like he could. He rode it all over. I wonder whatever happened to that unicycle. We should probably find that. It might be valuable someday. Anyway, it was another fun thing. I'm probably going to, as time goes by, I'm going to do a lot of things when my kids were young that we did. So that would be in the 70s. I'll probably bleed over into that and throw in things that I recall about my childhood, because I don't, there's only so many things you recall, and you can't go on forever about those, about your childhood. But I'm thinking I will continue and just blab on about things I remember about my growing up and my kids and raising my kids and even my grandkids as much. I wasn't around you guys as much after you moved away, but up until then, and our trips up there when with Terry and his tree legs. I need to see if I can get those pictures scanned and get so I can have pictures when I tell about that. And I'll go back when the more pictures I get, I'll go back and go over some of the old stuff too as I get pictures to show you, so that you can see some of the things I was talking about. Like I thought I had a picture up here of my brother and I on the Fleetwood floating device, but I guess I didn't put it on here for some reason. I don't know why, but I will next time. That'll be on the next one. And until that happens, come up and see me. I'd love to see you all. I miss you and I love you. And so we will talk later.